Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Blowback Roundtable. This is episode 41. We have returning special guests, Alex Suarez and Dust James. Alex, of course, is an expert in Central and South America issues and politics. He's really an expert on Alex Saab. I'm not sure how familiar our listeners are with Alex, but it's a great story we're going to get into. And then Dust James, of course, is coming from us on the road, but he's supposed to be starting his holiday soon. So I'm not sure if he's going to be in his truck the entirety of the show. But we're very pleased to have both of these guests with us. Ben, of course, is with us from Page.
You got it.
Page, Hungary. I'm getting that town down better now. Alex, let's start with you if we can. So the big news, was it yesterday or maybe the day before? But Alex Saab, who's been held in a U.S. prison essentially for a little while since he was extradited from Cape Verde, was recently released in a prisoner swap with Venezuela. 10 Venezuelans were released in exchange for Alex Saab. Can you just tell us a little bit about who Alex Saab is and what this is all about? Because if you read Wikipedia, you're probably going to have a really bad misunderstanding of the whole situation.
Sure. First off, just for the purpose of accuracy, I want to repeat some of the figures you said and give what they actually are, because I don't want people to say, "Oh, Alex said this when it wasn't true," or went along with this when it wasn't true. There was 10 prisoners that were American citizens that were released, and 14 Venezuelan prisoners released that are part of the extreme opposition that were arrested for various crimes. And all of them were in exchange for Alex Saab, and also one individual, a businessman, a Malaysian with U.S. residency, who escaped house arrest in Southern California, fled to Mexico, then went on to Venezuela. Something out of a movie. This guy, he goes by Fat Leonard, and he basically bribed half the admirals in the U.S. Navy. Very embarrassing. And God knows how much information he gave to Maduro when he went down there. But he went down to Venezuela and thought, oh, there's this corrupt country I keep hearing about on the TV. Let me go down and try to bribe them. Didn't work out. They had the Interpol notice, and they immediately arrested him. So Fat Leonard's due to be returned pretty soon as well. So they got a very good deal. They got Fat Leonard back. He'd been held in Venezuela about a year. Since October 2021. He's been in a Miami dungeon, Alex Saab, in June of 2020 during the Trump regime. So this shows the bipartisan imperialist maneuvers against a diplomat, mind you. That's why the name of my book, that's in 3 languages, is called The Diplomat. It makes that important that was demonstrated in the courts. I was there to see it myself in Miami. That he had diplomatic immunity under the Geneva Convention that was completely disregarded by the United States. And so when he was held on, still trying to wake up. When he was held on Cape Verde island, he was en route for a humanitarian mission to Iran, who were allied with Venezuela, to get food, medicines, oil. A lot of people also don't understand why is it that Venezuela has such an abundance of reserve oil but couldn't sell it? Because the only way you can sell it is to refine it. And all the tools that you need to refine oil are part of the sanctions list. They prevent Venezuela from having those tools to make what's necessary in the factories to refine their oil. The sanctions prevent them from importing them and using them. And so they were trying to get, in exchange for Venezuelan gold, much needed fuel or oil from Iran. And Alex Saab, who's a Colombian national of Middle Eastern background, but with Venezuelan nationality, who's been a Venezuelan diplomat since 2018. And also, that's important to understand that year, 2018, because the rupture of diplomatic relations with Venezuela was actually in 2019. Some of you may remember, you listeners, that there was an action in April and May of 2019 that I took part in at the Venezuelan embassy in the imperial capital in Washington, to protect that embassy from a violent takeover instigated by the Trump regime at the time. And why was that going on? Because there was diplomatic relations rupture. But he had been functioning as a diplomat, demonstrated in the courts, from the year before that. So the justification of the prosecution that they brought him to this country from Cape Verde, because he wasn't a real diplomat, because the United States didn't recognize Maduro. They did recognize Maduro when he was sworn in as a diplomat and a special envoy of the Chavista government at the time. And even with that, the judge was very biased. Judge Scola. I said at the time, there's no difference between Scalia and Scola. Scola was appointed by Obama. So I said that this so-called liberal judge, who's being fascistic when it comes to the Saab case and the protection of diplomats, is asking no different than the right-wing old Justice Scalia, Scola and Scalia, part of the same beast. So anyways, what ended up happening was there was even a sister I was in touch with at one time on Twitter. I don't remember her name. She was one of the sisters of one of the Americans that were held in Venezuela. By the way, these are not innocent Americans. Most of them were Americans that were either sent down to try to kidnap or murder Maduro, or were involved in what's it called? The black market, trying to inflate the currency, crossing over illegally from the Colombian border. So these are not angels by any means, these Americans that were captured. Oh, sorry. Hold on. My father needs me. You go ahead and talk to
Okay. So, that's
that was
interesting. There's some technical aspects of the court case he was getting into. So the U.S. argued that he wasn't a diplomat, and by so doing, I mean they were essentially just lying.
I'm back just in case you need me because I don't see dust there. But go ahead. What was your question?
Well, I was just summarizing what you had said about certain technical aspects of the court case. So you were there observing the actual court case, and you attended some of the hearings. And the judge was arguing that Saab did not have, or he was agreeing with the argument that he wasn't a diplomat, and so that's bullshit. But that's
They
how
didn't even say that. They didn't even say that. They said he was a diplomat under Maduro, but because they were recognizing Guaido. But then at one point, the defense said, "Excuse me, Guaido was voted up by his own party. He's not part of any governing body in Venezuela anymore."
So, I mean,
that doesn't matter because we're not doing business with Maduro. So wait a minute, we were doing business with Maduro still in 2018 when he was sworn in as a diplomat. So it was just just trying to find excuses. The judge was very biased.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to grab out, like taking the viewers back to that world. This is pre-COVID, pre-Ukraine, 2018, the presidential election where Maduro wins pretty much with a huge majority. But the US picks out its little play toy, which is Juan Guaido, and says, "You're the legitimate government, and all the gold in the London banks, it belongs to you, not to Maduro." So it was those circumstances, and all the sanctions in the world went just like a fence around Venezuela.
And Guaido's living with his millions that he stole from the Venezuelan people, walking the streets of Miami. That's the corrupt, not Alex Saab, not a principled diplomat who was fighting U.S. sanctions. That were the ones that were the corrupt.
With the cushy job at the International University at Miami, giving I think lectures on democracy. I think that's fantastic.
That's ironic. The biggest thwarter of democracy in Latin America.
Hillary does that too,
He never even ran for president. How are you going to pick somebody to be the U.S. puppet and say he's the real president? He never even ran. Yeah. He wasn't even known by the Venezuelans until the Trump regime at the time picked him to be the fake president.
They didn't just give him all the gold either, right? They tried to give him the embassy. They tried to give him the Citgo gas stations. I mean, they just gave him, And
the British have still not returned that gold, even with the return of Alex Saab. The British still have not returned the Venezuelan gold. There is compensation and an apology due to the Saab family. The fact that he was given clemency by the Biden regime, thank God he was returned after 3.5 years of this ordeal, separated from his family, from his wife, who I met. It's just been such a vindication, and we hope that Assange is next. There's a talk of Assange being pardoned next, and they're actually the same age. Alex Saab returned to Venezuela the day before his 52nd birthday. Him on the 20th. Him and Assange are both 52 years old. They're heroes of mine, and it's time for them both to be free.
Amen. So I read the Wikipedia entry on Alex Saab, and so coming away from that, like it seems to me that Saab is an unprincipled, traitorous, drug dealing, money laundering criminal. So how can you? So that's Wikipedia for you. I just want to make that point. That's what Wikipedia.
By the way, the biggest way to become a successful drug dealer in Colombia is to work with the U.S. That's exactly why Escobar lasted as long as he did and had his rivals taken out. So this is something that Alex Saab refused to do, and that's why they try to go after him. Maduro would have never accepted him in his government. He was involved in anything like that.
No, that's absolutely true. The CIA and drug dealing, there's a very tight connection. I mean, they're inextricably linked. And it's to help destabilize all that country and make sure that actual sovereignty, can't be developed and the people can't benefit from a government, that's interested in the best interest of the people.
And real quick, I was actually quoted in we talked about this before the recording of the show, in a NPR affiliate. So that's an official news organization at the Saab hearing, and they actually quoted me correctly. They didn't give my full quote. That article was a little less biased than the others. And somebody tried to put it in the Wikipedia, article on Saab, and even that was taken down by the editors because you have a cyber war in Wikipedia to prevent the truth from coming out. They only want to show one side of the Saab case. That's why when anybody wants to know about it, you say Google free Alex Saab, because there's a whole free Alex Saab movement. If they just Google Alex Saab, they're going to get the Wikipedia BS pieces, the literature against him. They're not going to show The Diplomat, the book I wrote in his defense, showing all the evidence, all the truth. How much did Maduro pay you for that book? Oh, it's funny you say that. You remember this, Dust, right? So Dust knows I like to prank people. It actually cost about $5 on Amazon to get $10,000 worth of Hollywood money. So I spent the $5. It was a Black Friday deal. I think it was half off. It's usually $10. So I spent the $5 and I took this picture up of all the money spread out on the table. And I said, I finally cashed a check from Maduro and Putin. Where's the money? Yeah, a sanctioned country in Latin America is going to pay me. Yeah. I spent my own money on that plane ticket.
You know what? The Wikipedia argument or discovery, you know what the whole thing reminds me of? Do you guys remember Victor Bout? The God of War movie, the Russian. I mean, he had nothing to do.
The Russian that was released.
Yeah, released and went back to Donbass and said, I'm going to fight for this place. And he had like a longer hair. I think Alex Saab has like a ponytail / man.
He still got long hair though. Yeah,
long.
A little bit of a hippie.
Yeah, and sort of, as you said, the the Australian guy. My brain is mush.
Assange.
Yeah, he has Assange hair basically. But I'm thinking, is there going to be a movie, of Alex Saab being this crooked, like a Narcos?
It wouldn't surprise me.
Because they have to.
So many resources.
Mockingbird Media has to keep the narrative alive. That's what that made me think of.
There was a guy who was one of the negotiators for the prisoner swap, American, and he said in the interview there was terrible repercussions from their grabbing Alex Saab. And I said, this is great. He's finally going to talk about how the U.S. had no respect for diplomatic immunity. He said, no, there were terrible repercussions because it prompted Maduro to kidnap Americans in Venezuela. I'm like, give me a break.
Of course.
Victor Boot played Nick Cage in real life, I believe.
Yeah, Nick Cage is a good actor. He played him. I saw that movie. I've seen it a couple times.
I like the movie.
Yeah. The Amnesty International gave good accommodations for the film as well. How to expose the underground gun industry and all that.
And Scott Ritter had a great interview. A friend of the show had a great interview with Victor Boot once he was released. But let's
get that redhead that she joined the NRA. She apparently was a Russian spy. She got released recently too.
Yeah.
When all this was going on, I'm like, okay, so the United States can negotiate with right Russian people, but they don't want to negotiate with Venezuela because they consider them inferior. But now they need the Venezuelan oil, right? It's not just a PR disaster that stuff like my book came out showing how the U.S. was complicit in this. It was also the fact that the Hutu movement was getting involved. They said, you're coming after us with the federal courts. You're also going after our brother Alex Saab. They didn't like that. And it was the fact that they needed Venezuelan oil and that Venezuela threatened to go into Guyana. Remember I mentioned that was a diplomatic move. Now they're negotiating with Ali. So all these things were done because Maduro knows what he's doing. He's very intelligent. And in the end, it worked out. Alex Saab was freed.
Yeah. So you want to plug your book a little bit more. So it's called The Diplomat, and you had interviews, you had extended correspondence with Alex's wife. Now, Wikipedia said she lives in Russia. Is that accurate?
Yeah, remember when I read that? It's like, how can that be? I just saw her in Caracas. She lives in Caracas. She went on a visit to Russia. It's like saying that a Huru lives in Moscow because once one of their leaders traveled there. I mean, that's Wikipedia for you.
That's amazing. And I thought that was actually true. I just assumed they wouldn't lie about a basic fact. They lie by spinning facts. And they're really disingenuous. They withhold facts, but I'm shocked to hear that. I really thought that she must have probably lived in Russia and there was a rational explanation. So that's just crazy.
I want to point something out too, not to toot my own horn, but this is just fact. This is what happened. People will want to talk with other groups and be hesitant to tell them about different causes, like the Uhuru movement. They might think, oh, they're more of a black thing. They're not going to worry about Alex Saab. I went up to the leadership and I told them about Alex Saab and in the early part of this year, and some of them were unaware. And within weeks, the leadership was speaking out for him. And they gave me access to their website, their hands-off site to write about Alex Saab. Recently, I wrote an op-ed in their official organ, which is hard to get in to write for, but I impressed them so much that I was able to write recently, 3 days before his release. On the 17th, I was able to get an article published in The Burning Spear, the official website of the Uhuru movement. And so never think that. Never think that. Talk to the other groups. Have them put all the maximum pressure they can. They're talking about maximum pressure against Venezuela, these sanctions, these unilateral coercive measures. We need to have our own maximum pressure to fight our causes. So let this be an example to others that you should speak out with all the groups that are under the gun of the U.S. empire, because they might not be afraid to speak out, and it might make that difference.
Yeah, I always say the Black Agenda Report isn't just for Black people, and I recommend it to everyone. But that's true. Now you mentioned that you bought. I didn't understand what Hollywood money is, but I guess that's just like
it's just fake money. It's not worth anything. It's what
Monopoly money.
You bought some fake money and you laid it out, and then you made a joke about getting paid off by Putin and Maduro. I wonder if.
By the way, I did that before Alex Saab was released because that would be disrespectful. It's a very serious matter that he's returned to his family. But yeah, a few weeks ago, I did that as a joke because, they constantly, oh yeah, that's another thing. Thank you for bringing that up again, because when I returned from Venezuela in late 2021, after observing their elections, I started getting attacked by Venezuelan exiled so-called journalists in Miami. The same ones were attacking Alex Saab, and I got to confront them to their face later outside the courthouse, telling them it was an honor to be defamed by them. The things that they were saying is he's paid by Maduro. And they said that Putin was paying us at the Black Lives Matter protest. So I decided, said, you know what? Let me get and put a trick on these guys. Can I swear?
Go ahead.
Let me go ahead and put a trick on these motherfuckers on Twitter and spread out this money and let them think it's real. Say, yeah, I cashed a check from Maduro and Putin. I just put it in their faces,
We've never been monetized and we never will. But it's interesting to know that in Miami, there's not just fucking gusanos from Cuba, but also Venezuelan gusanos.
Some of them were in Washington. Some of them recognized me from the embassy. They said they're from different parts of the country, Venezuelan exiles into Washington. They know who I am. They know I was one of the protectors. A lot of people on the right know me better, not know me. They know their perception of me better than people on the left, because I've never really sought, notoriety on the left for these things so much. But on the right, they have files. They know about me.
I wonder what kind of plantations their granddad owned, before the
right.
Yeah. I was joking about you being paid by Maduro because, according to Wikipedia, basically all this, free Alex Saab was a psyop run out of Caracas, funded by Maduro. It was just a big advertising campaign.
Well, let me tell you, when I told the Chavistas, can you give me some advice on what to say in this interview? You know what they told me? We trust you, Alex. You say what you want to say. They didn't control me. They didn't even advise me when I asked them for advice.
Yeah.
And it's funny because there's a word in Spanish. There's no translation to English. It more or less means namesake, but namesake means like were named after your father or your grandfather. But anyways, people call me Tocayo de Alex Saab. And Tocayo means you have the same name as the person. So that was funny, right? Because there was a Venezuelan when I went down there who said, Alex Suarez? And I said, no, Alex Suarez, Alex S like Alex Saab. And then they remembered. But I didn't expect to meet his wife when I went down there. It was beautiful how I was able to meet up with her and give her that promise that's now fulfilled. I said, I'll do everything I can for your husband to be free. I'm in Florida. I'm in the empire. We're going to keep fighting. And there was people that were outside the courthouse in Miami, socialists, that outnumbered the counter protests. That outnumbered the people in Miami where all the right wing are. They were too cowards to show up. And it's just a beautiful thing when what you've been dreaming of, what you've been fighting up for every day is finally come true. And let's hope that the other prisoners of the empire, Assange, etc., are set free next.
Never thought I'd be encouraged by Miami, but you succeeded.
Some of them came from the outside, but no, there's some leftists in Miami. I used to live down there. I'm in a different part of the state now.
What do you think is the whole impetus behind this? You vaguely touched on, the West needing Venezuelan oil to come back on the market. Is that why maybe we're seeing a little bit of thawing of relations and trying to engage in, political
Let me tell
discussion?
you, that, to answer your question, the referendum freaked out. We had 2 million people voting it. This is a country under sanctions. The West freaked out when the referendum came down. They're like, damn, they're going to go into Guyana. They're going to take out ExxonMobil.
Yeah,
We better negotiate with them. That really helped, didn't it?
the Essequibo resolution, right?
Yeah, there's a Essequibo dispute and all that. And one of the two things that I want to mention in Maduro's speech that he gave alongside Alex Saab was a beautiful speech. I translated part of it already. He got to say in front of Alex Saab for the first time, all the medicines, the vaccines, the food that you helped bring to this country continue to come to this country while you were being tortured in Cape Verde. That was beautiful. And at the end of his speech, out of all the people he thanked, Maduro said, I want to thank the leftists in Miami.
Hey.
Protested outside the courthouse to support Alex Saab. And that's when I couldn't hold back. It was beautiful.
Was Alex Saab kind of like a what did they call it's a weird reference, but Enlai, Zhao Enlai was he was a traitor to his class. So is that kind of like Alex Saab, because he's a person of wealth, right?
His parents were not wealthy. His parents were poor immigrants from Lebanon and Palestine that migrated to a part of Colombia and the Caribbean near Venezuela, where there's a lot of Arab immigrants. He's completely self-made. He's the opposite of Trump, right? That's ironic. But he's self-made, and he had legitimate business practices. And so, he was very good and very innovative, particularly in the food industry. He had strong connections in the Middle East to import food to Colombia and Venezuela, which he used later to help Venezuela while they were under sanctions. So he's a legitimate self-made businessman who was a socialist because he came from a poor and working class background, who used that wealth to help, to donate to the causes and to the campaigns in Venezuela and whatnot. So that's what he is. Not every rich person is a capitalist. And of course, he's lost a lot of money as a result of this. He's not as rich, but he doesn't care about that. He cares about helping the people. He's shown that. And in all the nights that they tortured him in Cape Verde that I read about, he never uttered a word against Maduro. He never collaborated with the United States. It's despicable that they would say that he was an agent.
You guys probably know, but Billy Bob, I thought I should expand. That was a fantastic conversation between Zhou Enlai, who was the premier of China at the time, meeting Khrushchev. Khrushchev came from a lowly background, pork farmer or something, and went up to become premier. And Enlai, his family was Mandarin, not the language, but the status, a really rich family. And he said, they said, we are each traitors to our classes, because Enlai betrayed the rich fucking monopolists. And Khrushchev, as it's made apparent now, historically has betrayed the proletarians, basically the lowest of the Soviet class. I just thought maybe people didn't get that reference, but it's a cool quote. You should.
Yeah, thank you, Ben.
I think the biggest mistake Khrushchev made, and I mentioned this on Dust Show the other day, was giving Crimea, against the will of the Crimean people who are Russians, giving Crimea over to Ukraine for becoming an ally of the Soviet Union, because it took a referendum and decades later for them finally to be returned to where they've wanted to go all along, Russia. And then they use it to say, annexation, invasion. I think he was being over generous with the Ukrainians at the time, Khrushchev. And of course, Khrushchev's parents, I heard, were Ukrainian background as well. So,
yeah, Khrushchev. But I mean, I wouldn't call it its biggest mistake, but definitely it's
one of them.
It's one. It's one of many.
What else?
He was very supportive of the Cuban Revolution. His foreign policy was very good in Latin America. Brezhnev, of course, sabotaged Che. We all know that. But he was supportive of Che Guevara, Fidel, Khrushchev. So there was some good in his foreign policy as well.
I was wondering, Billy Bob, I don't know if Dust wants to get in a word. I'd be keen to hear.
Yeah, Dust, you're very silent.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm listening.
Okay, if not, I was wondering, since we got Alex with us and he's the Latin America expert, I mean, right next door, well, a bit to the south, but we also have Milei, the fresh leader, of Argentina, and don't know if you've paid attention to the stuff he's been doing.
He's a maniac.
Absolute maniac. But I mean, all the Russian commentators I see say, okay, this is basically Yeltsin. I mean, it's going to crater that country, as he's going to be remembered as an absolute criminal. I mean, just to sum up.
And Yeltsin was a drunk. He could barely put two words together.
Yeah, but the people who made the in the background who made the decision. Privatize everything, make foreign ownership legal. That's what he's doing, and also cracking down on any kind of protests. I wonder.
By the way, Biden can barely put two words together either. He doesn't need to be drunk for that.
Yeah, but we all know I mean, you wouldn't put the television remote in his hand. He's not in charge of anything. You know that. But he's the face. Yeah. So I wondered if you had a take or anything to say about Milei and his new Argentina.
Dust would know. Dust knows a lot about Latin America as well.
I'm not super aware of it. I think the Yeltsin remarks pretty close. I mean, neoliberal puppets out to steal the resources of the Latin American people is pretty spot on.
Yeah, privatize. I don't know if you've heard this, but obviously he went into more IMF debt to pay off the previous IMF debt, and what he's doing as collateral, I think it's called, is the nationalized the energy system, the oil company that they have, the air, the Argentinian airwaves, not airwaves, the flight, the passenger jets and all that. And in the meantime, he asked the big bad China, who he's been bad-mouthing for months and months and months, the dirty commies, hey, can you refresh that sort of currency swap we've had? It's been refreshed in October, but by my predecessor. And China said, nope, fuck off, no plata,
Yep.
Fuck off. I thought that was a wonderful development. And
Well, the Chinese are very polite. You don't want to misquote them. They said it in a nice way.
They didn't say fuck off, of course. They just said no. I said fuck off.
I heard in China you can't even say, "Can you give me a glass of water?" That's considered rude. You have to say it's pretty hot out, and then they offer it to you. They're very indirect in their customs and how polite they are.
And twice that in diplomacy. But that piece of news could be interesting. I just wondered if anybody had any takes on that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a disaster, like you guys all said, for Argentina, and and then they're going to have to deal with the fallout, and then they're going to write the history, and they'll probably blame the leftists, somehow, inexplicably. But I like, Alex summed him up as a maniac. That's a good summation, I think, in one word.
His clone dog gives him political advice.
True.
Yeah.
Dead dog. I
Well,
think he
people
talks
don't
to
realize this. He actually thinks that the dog that died that he cloned. So we're being literal here. He had enough money to clone his dog, and he says this dog gives him political advice. And I don't understand Ecuador by 3% margin. I don't know what the margin was in Argentina. Ecuador still voted in a right winger after they destroyed their economy. You had Luisa, who was running. What was her name? Luisa Hernandez or something. She was backed by Correa. She would have been great as president of Ecuador. But 3% of the population is still manipulated by the media. They're run by the oligarchs in Ecuador, some dictatorship, right? They were able to turn the vote over to the right again. Very disappointing. So, yeah, Ecuador and Argentina and Peru through a coup, right? Dina Boluarte, they're still under the right. But you still have leftist governments rising up, though. You have Brazil, Venezuela, Colombia, Nicaragua, etc. So, they're bringing some hope. In Mexico, AMLO's doing great work. He's standing up to the U.S., and a lot of the conferences that are attended by Chavistas are attended in Mexico, right next door to the empire. No.
Also,
so, hope there.
Other than South Africa and President, I think Ramaphosa, he's the other outspoken critic of Israel, like really, really outspoken. That's AMLO.
And Malaysia too. Malaysia is representing in Asia a country that is actually using its influence to prevent Israeli ships from entering their ports. This is recent. And, of course, Yemen, under the Houthis, is doing the same thing. So that gives me a lot of hope.
Oh, okay. You want to transition to the Middle East and the Red Sea? Because we could do that.
I agree with Ursula. I mean, you can't be more badass than the Houthis right now. I mean, they literally captured some rich Israeli guy's vessel.
Johnny Ansarallah does not fuck around. While all the others, the Arab kingdoms, they're thinking, oh, we'll do some deal here. Maybe we'll talk some diplomacy. They're saying, oh, let's go. Let's get the ships. Let's fucking take it. I don't care. And it's wonderful that they're free to do that. They really are the only ones in the region standing up against genocide. Wonderfully done. Do you want to address Operation Prosperity Guardian that the U.S. has put together in a ramshackle way? Which is supposed to now safeguard the Red Sea from these bad Houthis?
Isn't that double talk? They don't mean prosperity for Asia.
No, they mean capitalism.
I just want to
in the
speak on
transit.
Yemen and the Houthis for a bit before we get
Go.
into the further detail of the current situation. I mean, they're the Saudi-led, U.S.-funded war that I that is that has not intensified now, but started with Obama, continued under Trump.
8 or 9
Um,
years. Yeah.
really is its own a genocide of its own. The majority of the country is in complete malnutrition, and there's people dying from starvation conditions in mass in the thousands now, and will do even if they were able to get food now, thousands in the future. The humanitarian situation is a
Where's the
genocide.
Marshall Plan for Yemen? You're going to withdraw from Yemen. You better help reconstruct them, or there's going to be another war.
So it's really courageous that their leadership is fighting against the genocide in Palestine, and
One in
by seizing U.S. Israel capital, but U.S. pawn Israel
BP,
capital.
stop sending ships to the Red Sea now. Not because of Egypt, but because of Yemen. They're actually acting like men. They're standing up. And now BP, which has a long history of coups in the region, backing coups in the region, in Iran and whatnot, and in Latin America as well. Now they're stopped from going through the Red Sea. It's great.
The BP was amazing because it's British Petroleum, guys. That's what it is. And within an hour of them saying we're going to have to do an alternate route around, the Cape of Good Hope, around Africa, basically twice the mileage. Within an hour, Rishi Sunak had, and this headline on his Twitter X, the Prime Minister of England said, well, I am now for a permanent ceasefire, something like that, within an hour of that news dropping.
It's economic.
They hit them when it hurt, where it absolutely hurts. And that's why, and also, as Das said, 1 in 4 Yemenis are in not just defined poverty, but extreme poverty.
At the level of Gaza, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why it's just the purest, the most amazing people on earth right now. I'll say that.
And there's got to be support from other non-Houthi, Sunni people for the Houthi government. If I was a Sunni from Yemen and the Saudis attacked my country and attacked my brothers in Palestine, I'd be supporting the Houthis too. And you saw something similar in Lebanon when the Israelis were invading southern Lebanon and parts of Beirut in the early 2000s. They did an opinion poll, and 90% of the population, so a large section of the population that didn't support Hezbollah prior, were all supporting Hezbollah because they were the only ones resisting. The regular Lebanese army at that time was not resisting.
Oh, the same thing currently happened, I think, above 60, but I don't have the number here, of the West Bank Palestinian people now support Hamas. It's the opposite effect of what Israel and the U.S. wanted to achieve.
And there's going to be a lot of sons and daughters that want revenge for all this mass killing. If anything, this is going to embolden Hamas, not weaken it.
People have seen too much of this. I mean, this really is televised. You can, you mentioned earlier Telegram. Oh, maybe that was off the air. The Telegram, the Russian social media thing. You can watch this slaughter, and it's horrible. And people have had enough.
I mean, the Holocaust was covered up by the Germans quite intentionally, and of course, there wasn't internet back then. Here we have a massive slaughter, a genocide, quasi-Holocaust scenario going on before our eyes. The whole world is watching it.
3 Hiroshimas, more civilian casualties when you look at as compared to the violence and the population than anything in the 20th century, which I mean, that came out by some sort of NGO. I'm not sure which.
And it's still ongoing.
That's 2 world
killing
wars
every day. What, 20,000 now? Yeah.
Benjamin Netanyahu is mad as ever. But as you said, the Houthis, the northern, the Ansar Allah movement, that's what they like to be called, I think. They're not without friends. I mean, Iran cannot say out loud, we're with you. But, they're absolutely supporting the movement. And two organizations, which was PIJ and Hamas in Gaza, and, of course, Hezbollah in Lebanon, already thanked the Houthis for their operations in the Red Sea. I mean, it's hard to tally, but between 5 and 10 ships either captured or attacked, not sure which one was destroyed. So that's why the U.S. was forced into this, which made
Well, it's crazy because now Netanyahu's not lying anymore about the 2-state. He says, I'm proud to have thwarted a 2-state solution. So he's saying the truth now.
Yeah.
He's given leeway. And Iran responded by saying, we agree with you.
That's what's beautiful.
Said, we're for a 1-state solution too, only with all the Zionists out.
So I can't imagine how this is all going to end up turning out good for Israel or good for Western imperialism. It's just a further sign of the inevitable collapse of U.S. power, U.S. hegemony. And it's great to watch, but there's fallout. Like there's a lot of deaths as a result of this transition. into multipolarism.
Hmm.
Right now, it's Gaza and Ukraine.
And economic fallout. We are connected via the Turk Stream gas pipeline, so ours goes on land unchanged. But Western Europe is buying mostly refined, oil and gas from India, which has to come through there, and they've already noticed, a real uptick. So it has an economic effect here in Europe. But two amazing pieces of news about this Operation Prosperity Guardian that both were between Tuesday and today. One was the apparently Russian oil tankers are just free to pass, which was amazing. First, it was on Baku television, as in Azerbaijani television, and then on RT, and TASS, and saying, okay, they could just cross the Suez. They're exempt from all of this. I thought that was amazing. The second one was there's a little fleet of Chinese warship berthed in, just opposite that in Djibouti, which is the opposite. The Bab el Mandab Strait is between Yemen and Africa, and Djibouti is on the other side, lots of military bases. And apparently they had Israeli ships calling, rescue me, what they say? Mayday, Mayday. And they didn't get, again, they're polite. They didn't say this, but they didn't give a fuck. They didn't feel they needed to respond.
Well,
They're exempt from this. And that's amazing to me that the new multipolar players, that includes Iran, that includes China and Russia, are exempt from this, very rightly so. It's not an indiscriminate destruction.
Let me ask you something, Comrade Ben. Do you find Chinese policy in regards to Palestine is different than Russian? Because Russia lately has made pro-Palestine statements, but China's kind of been neutral on the issue, haven't they?
I see it the opposite way. I saw there was a big, press thing with Vladimir Putin, it was a 4-hour Q&A, a massive marathon. And when they asked about Palestine, that was the one I felt let down, but I understand the game he's playing. He said, well, first we have to pause this thing, then we have to get aid in. And he still didn't go against the traditional Russian, neutral status. But Sergei Lavrov has, Maria Zakharova has, and the population of Russia, I know for a fact, they're as angry as the Chinese are, and the Chinese are very angry at everything they've been seeing. And China, of course, does diplomacy. They don't do big headlines, big blurts out, but what they're doing is they're working with every nation in the region, saying, how can we bring this to an end? And I think they have some plans one response to this coalition of the willing, whatever, the Prosperity Guardian, was Iran, very closely allied. It's under the umbrella of Russia and China. Said, we're doing this civilian fleet, about 30,000 boats, but they're all going to be equipped with our latest missiles. That's way too many targets for anybody to cross, but that's, of course, up there. So it's not the Red Sea. But still, we're ready for this. If you want to escalate, we're with you. That's a good message from, I think.
So are the Houthis giving free rein for Russia and Chinese vessels?
Currently, that's yes. Yes,
I think they're just interdicting Israeli or those that are part of this coalition of Protect Prosperity or whatever. I think those are the only.
There was a Taiwanese shipping firm that said, we're going around Africa and not risking it. But mainland China, the one that is called, holy shit, Tencent's the gaming one. This Costco freely traversed the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. So, yep.
But the Somali pirates might get them too, and then they might be Western backed. I wouldn't be surprised if they use the Somalis kind of as a counterforce to the neighboring Yemenis.
Well, as I said, China also has naval forces in the area, maybe exactly for that reason. They just don't respond to Israeli hails.
And
I wanted to add 2 points.
A good point and a good counterpoint.
I wanted to add 2 points on this, and the first one is it's important not to blame the victim. Any disruption of forces of the economy that would hurt workers in Europe and Africa and all the world is primarily the fault of the imperialists who are profiting on the ongoing violent, destructive system.
I'm celebrating the victories of the Houthis.
Yes. And then the next point is we're told that, hey, if you stand up for your community, let's say in the immigrant community here, like, oh, don't fly the flag of Mexico at May 6th, or the Klan's going to come after the community and they're going to terrorize us. That's the stuff we get told. Or, you fly the American flag, not the flag of Latin American countries. You're in America now. Don't have national pride, even though you were forced from there. Or, or they tell black folks, don't be so radical. Or, what I'm trying to say? And the thing is, there is sometimes when we stand up for ourselves, of workers and oppressed people, um, they do retaliate against us. But to be honest, us standing up, one example of us standing up for ourselves, achieving something and making wins against the enemy inspires far more other oppressed and working people to do the same than any amount of retaliation they could do it against us. So I think we should cheer on, even though you can't take these actions lightly, but they should be supported, and we should continue to be in support
If you
oppressed
want,
people standing up, and continue to applaud them and not tell them to stop.
I think all four of us are in full support of.
Yeah, I wasn't arguing with y'all. I just wanted to just get the word out there, brothers.
for the record, yeah. And to talk about two specific actions recently from Israel, I wanted to mention.
Good.
One was the second bombing of nuns that they did after the Pope called them terrorists.
And that was because they sniped two nuns in a. Sorry.
Yeah, they also sniped them as well. Yeah, but there was a statement by Macron in France that was critical of Israel, and then within days they killed the French ambassador in Gaza. You mean to tell me they have the most sophisticated, or one of the most sophisticated intelligence agencies in the world, the Mossad? And I think the only reason why the Mossad wasn't able to prevent October 7th is because they underestimated the Palestinians and their bad leadership under Netanyahu. But or bad leadership's good for the Palestinians, right? But you know what I meant. Yeah. But you mean to tell me that they didn't know that in that house, and by the way, he was housed with other diplomats. That was supposed to be a protected house. You mean to tell me that it was an accident? This is Israel sending a message that we will retaliate and kill your diplomats and kill your nuns if you speak out against us. This is a terrorist state. And they're not just attacking Palestinians now. And also, they're attacking their own people. You mean to tell me a redheaded Zionist guy, naked, with his hands in the air, speaking perfect Hebrew,
with little white
and they killed him. They shot him twice. They shot him once. He could have still survived. He fled. They went towards him after they killed the other two Zionists, and they shot him dead too. I think it was the fulfilling of the Hannibal Directive. I don't know. Apparently they didn't want their hostages back. They're so-called hostages. They're prisoners in the war. But if you want to put it that way, but yeah. So Israel has no respect for human life. They're killing their own people. They're killing Palestinians. They're killing diplomats and nuns, Palestinian nuns. A lot of Christian Zionists still don't want to recognize there's such thing as a Palestinian Christian. But this is what's going on. It's a terrorism.
Yeah, I mean, I heard it from some, I think Larry Johnson maybe, that there is no such thing as Israel diplomacy. It's just the IDF. That replaces all diplomacy.
IOF, right? The offensive forces.
IOF is what it should rightly be called. Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, how do we explain, that behavior? I mean, I think it has to do with ultra-nationalism. And, it ought to be said that it has nothing to do with religion or Jewishness, right? It's Zionism, and it's the ultra-nationalism of this colonial project, in the middle of the Mideast. And they have this mentality, right? This mentality that they're under siege, and they have this mentality that they're just constantly being victimized by everyone, and they kind of just don't give a fuck. And that's so. I mean, it's kind of difficult to try and psychoanalyze why this is going on, but it might be kind of necessary too. But it has to do with the long history of ending with the Holocaust, but even before that, hundreds of years of pogroms and things like that. And this is really inculcated into the ultra-nationalists that live in Israel as kids. And so they're brought up, indoctrinated into thinking everybody hates us. We're special. It's a problem. It's a fucking problem. And I don't know what the solution is, except for generations and generations of deprogramming. And it's definitely not all Jews, because a lot of Jews, I mean, call it out, and they rightly, condemn this kind of indoctrination that goes on, from the ultranationalist government in that ultranationalist state.
I want to respond, but I think Dust had something important.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of parallels of the ideologies of fascist tools of the imperialist. This is what Israel is, a fascist tool of the imperialist. We have fascist tools of the imperialists in the South, the white supremacists. And they're constantly saying, oh, the whites are being replaced. And the worst person to be in America is a white person, and they act like they're the victim, and they're this and that. And meanwhile, the cops the racist sheriffs and cops that they voted in power are murdering the black and brown people in the streets. And they praise people like Zimmerman and others, and the brutal and continual, arguably genocide, if not suppression, of oppressed people in the United States.
Yeah,
You
it's like
get
a
the same
Do you know
bullshit
that?
from the white
vigilante.
nationalists.
Sorry,
That's
The
what
white
sorry.
Zimmerman
nationalists
was.
here. Yeah,
Yeah.
you get the same. It's the same bullshit, false victimhood from
Do you,
masses of the white supremacists in the United States. I mean,
it's re-
Israel white supremacists, American white supremacists, very similar, both
and
fascist.
it's really funny to see them, the graduates of like Ivy League, Jewish students, paid most of the time by the ADL or APAC, saying we are oppressed, look at me, I'm afraid. And it's like, do you know this name, Megyn Kelly? White chick, she used to be Fox News, and she does the same thing. We are a minority in this country, look how oppressed I am. She's a fucking millionaire in a house that I
Well, isn't
unimaginable.
it ironic that they call it the Anti-Defamation League?
Yeah,
And just to put it out there, in
it's
case
just a DL now, isn't it?
comes on and says anti-Semitism, I'm part Jewish and proudly so. But the Anti-Defamation League, they do the most defamation ever against anti-Zionists, in particular anti-Zionist Jews, by calling people like us self-haters. It's ridiculous. By the way, Ben, do you mind sending me the link to the show in the chat? I want to share it on Twitter.
I don't have it. I think Billy Bob will have
Oh
it.
yeah, Billy Bob, please. But yeah,
Okay.
I mean, this is what they do in the name of anti-defamation. They commit themselves to defamatory acts.
But I think I want to. This is more to Billy Bob's point. I can't do psychoanalysis. It's a poison pill that the British left there in the heart of Arabia, basically. Northern Africa, going all the way to the east, to the Arab lands. They speak one language as opposed to Europe, where there's like 40. Okay, and it was inherited by the US. But what's really changed this time, like the Ukraine propaganda fell apart. If you just let these people like Gallant and whoever the IDF head is, and increasingly Netanyahu just speak and put little subtitles on what he's spewing in Hebrew, it's just unhinged, and people see it. It's just when they talk about their plans and what they think, just believe them. And a lot of people, I believe Scott Ritter is not alone. I believe this with all my heart because he grew up saying Israel is the nice democracy in the Middle East, and he's challenged that too.
Well, Ben, you probably know more about this than me. Amalek, right? I like history, but I don't really study religious history and biblical history much.
Yeah,
I think
it's
the
not Bible.
It says kill every man, woman, child, and plant. Like
yes,
completely wipe out, and that's what they want to do in Gaza.
And animal, and that was like day one or day two, maybe October 8th. That was.
Dust left. Hopefully he's back soon. Yeah, but that's what they were saying from the beginning, right?
Yeah, you have to look at the enemy. Goyim, the non-people, they are the sons of Amalek, and that should do our response. And that's not. That's not.
And you never see Netanyahu wear a yarmulke. He's not a religious Jew by any means, but he uses religion to justify things when it suits him.
Exactly. It's part of Zionism, even though most of them are secular. They still think that, that land, they claim that land was given to them by God. And in the Bible, of course, the Old Testament, God instructed the children of Israel to go in there and to destroy, every man, woman, and child. So to them, it's not immoral if God tells them to do it. I mean, is the ostensible argument. God told us to do it in the past. There's no reason why we shouldn't do it in the present, except for, all these other people are going to oppose us.
Yeah.
But, that's a propaganda problem. We got to propagandize those people and that's it. And continue on our objective of what? Greater Israel. I mean, Greater Israel has been the Zionist project.
And that's popped up this week. It's like come back, Greater Israel. It's becoming more and more mentioned. And there's also maps. I don't know if the Jordan or the Saudis know about it, but all of Jordan and half of Saudi Arabia would be in that. I don't know if they're aware of this, the plans.
And there's a reason Israel has never declared its borders and says, hey, this is our country. and we're going to defend these borders because the project is to continually expand and
They want to go into Lebanon next. They're going to try to go to Lebanon.
Yeah, I mean, you said ultra-nationalist, and I'm not sure that fits perfectly. I think it's an expansionist virus like it's neo, or it doesn't matter, neo or old colonial project. I think that's much closer to,
Well,
maybe
it's
you
a
can say
nationalist ideology, but it's definitely perverting a lot of concepts in order to try to accomplish that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely true believers in
Dust is back.
in the belief that Israel, deserves to have this land, and it's and that's their interest. And the colonialists are, manipulating and using these ultra nationalists, but these are true believers. Whereas the imperialists, they're not true believers in, and having this particular land, controlled by this particular people. They're just finding it, useful in their imperialism.
Apparently, their concept of God is he's a real estate agent.
Right.
Gave land over them or something. I don't know.
It's what's really bad is the Christians that buy into that. And do these Christians not realize what a bad name they're giving Christianity?
Well, it is an evangelical interpretation of the Old Testament, Zionism. It's not a Jewish interpretation. Most Jews rejected Zionism for a long time. And so it's really a perversion of a lot of ideas using religion to justify a political ideology.
No, exactly. And even the idea that, the people of Israel, modern day Jewish people, are, fulfilled Bible prophecy by returning to the land in 1949. Like that interpretation is very new. It's only within the last couple hundred years with a particular, the Schofield Reference Bible, so so for thousands
what
of
happened
years.
in 1950, Billy Bob? You know what happened in 1950? The Mossad went into Iraq and into Egypt and started bombing synagogues to encourage Arab Jews to migrate to Israel so they could have a bigger population. They attacked their own people once again, like they're doing now in Gaza with the hostages, with so-called hostages and all that.
Gilad Naimi or somebody like that. He was like an Iraqi Jew, and he wrote a book about just that. How they fomented anti-Semitism in the Arab countries to force the Jewish minority population out and into Israel. And
I'm also critical of the Arab leaders at the time because they should have seen through this. They had their own intelligence agencies to figure these things out. Instead, they did the Zionists a big favor. They had Arab Jews that detested Zionism become Zionists because they were being thrown out of the country.
Yeah, that's true. That's totally true.
And I'm also very upset with Sisi, as you know, because there are people that are anti-Semites that are using the situation to adhere their ideology. They're minority. Most anti-Zionists have nothing against Jews. But, I'm very consistent. I'm very critical of the Israelis. They're the ones that have the power. They have a much stronger military than the Egyptians, even though they're a smaller country. But Sisi's complicit in this as well. I brought up in the last show. He could act like a much stronger leader to help prevent the furthering of the bloodshed.
Yeah, and again, I don't know if he's aware that his land is part of Greater Israel. It is. It's on that map. And by the way, you've heard about the Ben Gurion Canal?
Yeah. What's his name? Richard Medhurst. I brought up last time. Yeah, Richard Medhurst.
Man, he does the best analysis, and he brought my attention to it. That they were set in stone. Like there was a plan that was, confidential for a long time. His
parents are diplomats, by the way. So Richard Medhurst has access to a lot of stuff through his family. So
he knows this region like nobody else. But the Ben Gurion Canal back in the '60s was a U.S. project. Again.
Isn't he half Syrian? He's half Syrian, right?
Yes, he's got relatives in Syria. Anyway, I wanted to finish this because it was dropping like 500 nukes to build that fucking canal, and it is just to screw over Egypt and the Suez Canal because, it just absolutely ruined their income. And I don't know if Egypt is aware of this. They could just stop before the Houthis did. They could have just stopped the traffic through the Suez Canal just for 2 days, and it would be checkmate for everyone. But Sisi doesn't do it.
They don't exercise their power.
Yeah, and a lot of the Arab states don't.
So Mubarak wasn't somebody that the West could control, and so they got in somebody that they can control. But did I say Mubarak? No, I meant the Muslim Brotherhood guy that came after Mubarak.
Yeah, exactly. Morsi was a pro-Palestinian leader. Yeah. Mubarak was not. Sisi's a lot like Mubarak. But Morsi took him out in a coup, and he died in prison.
He was the Muslim Brotherhood guy, right?
Yeah, but he was a moderate member of the Muslim Brotherhood. He was an extremist. And he was, by all accounts, a good guy. Very pro-Palestine. He was preparing to open up the border with Gaza, and then he was taken out in a coup. It's very sad. I mean, he was in prison, but then later died. Yeah.
And that's how imperialism works. The U.S. still has a lot of power, and they can, manipulate the governments, put in proxies that are essentially going to, follow Western U.S. dictates to the detriment of the people, but in benefit of Western imperialism. So the struggle is to reduce the amount of power the U.S. has over these governments, and so we definitely support the resistance movements in Iran, in Lebanon, in Palestine, Syria. And we want everybody to get on board. So we like that China and Saudi Arabia
don't leave Iran out, please.
I thought I said Iran. If I didn't say Iran, it's my bad.
My bad if you did.
So, but this peace accords, the peace plan between Yemen and Saudi Arabia. So the U.S. got Saudi Arabia to invade Yemen, thinking that we could, just take out that, resistance movement, and it didn't work. And the Saudis got bogged down. They're trying to negotiate a peace settlement, and the U.S. is trying to tell Saudi Arabia not to declare a peace. And all of us, of course, want a peace, but we want to see a shift from pro-U.S. Slavishness to a more
sovereign. Please, sovereign is the word.
That's the word, sovereignty. And it's lacking. It's lacking in Egypt, but we want to see it develop.
Bolivia today is more sovereign than many of these Arab regimes, because Bolivia ruptured diplomatic relations with Israel recently, and you have this genocide going on in broad daylight, and you still have Arab regimes that are in business with Israel again.
Yeah.
I just want to add from my region that we just got a huge investment from BYD, the EV company in China, in Hungary. Like that's today's huge news, and already like the Samantha Powers and the US is saying bad Hungary, and the EU is saying we should get rid of your voting rights. So they're angry at us.
I was proud that your country did that, Comrade Ben. I was like, yes, a European country standing up against the Ukrainian Nazis. I loved it. They were the only one that did that.
Yeah, so am I. This week is when, for the first time, when Orban said that this is actually not a war. This is a special military operation. He waited 2 years for that, saying if Russia no country declared war, but if Russia declares war, you're going to fucking see war. And I waited a long time for him to say that. I just wanted to contrast that with these Muppets and,
They don't want a coup against Zelensky. If they wanted a coup against Zelensky, it would have been done already.
Of course not. No. Before we shift, I wanted to go on a limb and say a positive note, because the US had always had two prongs of power. One is soft power, through the media, through the NGOs, put their little things in, believe what we say. I think that's waning really fast. Like I would even say crumbling. But the second was the big, the military deterrence factor. And I think a crucial blow was dealt to that, both in Ukraine and now in the Red Sea. I'm going to read to you just a couple of, they put this coalition together, the Guardian, Prosperity Guardian. I just want a response that I collected from a bunch of ministries of defense. So Australia will actually not send ships, but they will send 16 troops. That's Australia. Spain officially denied any participation in it. Netherlands will deploy 2 staff officers. Canada will deploy 3 staff officers. Britain will send 1 missile destroyer, the HMS Diamond. France will send its frigates, but it won't be under the command of the US. It will be to safeguard French interests. And Italy will send 1 frigate, the Virginio Fassa, which will also be under Italian command and to safeguard Italian interests. That's all they could muster. Nobody is going close to the big aircraft carrier that was supposed to save the world. And I know from Professor Mohamed Marandi that they were excited when that fucking tub, I don't know which one it was, but that went close to Iran's, the Persian Gulf, saying, oh, you think you're scaring us? You're coming into the range of our missiles. We got hypersonics, man, now. You got things that are 50 years old. They are not intimidated.
Do you know that Morocco?
And I think that is great news. Go ahead.
The Kingdom of Morocco were sellouts. They're treating the Saharian people like Palestinians. It's terrible. They're very complicit with the West. They have been for a long time. But the Kingdom of Morocco, actually, in the so-called Coalition of the Willing in Iraq, a lot of people don't know they actually sent support. But this pathetic Coalition of the Willing, like the coalition you're mentioning now, all Morocco sent was monkeys. Yes, they sent a bunch of monkeys because they would run across the ground to see if there was mines still there. That's the support.
Demining monkeys. Good on you, Morocco, because you can do it symbolically. You know, we'll send 3 staff officers. I think that's a brilliant way to say fuck off.
And do you know how I found out about the Saharians? I lived in Spain. I didn't know about the Saharians. They speak Spanish. They were a former Spanish colony near Morocco. I found out about the Sahari movement in Venezuela because Maduro is very supportive of Saharian independence. Every country in North Africa observed the elections back then, except for Morocco, because they don't have good relations with Venezuela, because Venezuela, like other progressive countries, is supporting the Saharian movement.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that. I know Morocco is a bit of a puppet, like we're complaining Egypt is, and Saudi Arabia has been. So that's unfortunate. But yeah, again, all that is shifting, and it's great to see. And I want to re-emphasize Ben's point about how the Red Sea is really beginning to be a demonstration of what is that other word for lack of military prowess? I mean,
the weakness of the U.S. military.
Weakness.
Impotency.
That's even
that's
better.
The one. Impotence. Thank you, Alex. So yeah, it's going to be a demonstration of Western military impotence, especially if they end up, losing a ship or two. There's no military option for the West in the Red Sea. It's just non-existent, and yet they're not realizing that, and they're escalating. And it's just going to make things worse for them. Scott Ritter's done some great work recently on interviews, just really hitting that point home. But it's a super important point, and it's going to be fun to watch. The Schadenfreude I'm going to be having from enjoying, seeing the West just
I'm having some cathartic moments from what the Houthis are doing. I'm not ashamed of that. Absolutely cathartic.
Well, I proposed an idea here live. Don't worry, it's not controversial.
Go.
I would love, because I've been trying to reach Scott Ritter for a long time. I would love to be on a panel with him where I could talk about Latin America, he could talk about the Middle East, or whatever he wants to talk about, of course. I'm not dictating what he talks about, but I would love to be on a show with Scott and get in touch with him. He's a fascinating man. And he's a hero. He helped Iraq not get invaded before 2003. He exposed that weapons program. Ultimately, it was still invaded, but he helped avoid a war for a while.
Yeah. He is so busy, but he's a good sport, and he's come on a few times. If we can get him back, I'll definitely invite you on with us. But I know, man, he's just inundated all the time.
He's not an interruptible person.
That's the other thing. It's more of a monologue with Scott, but it's great. But it's tough to have a back and forth.
Yeah.
But
he's wonderful.
He knows what he talks about. He talks about his military expertise in the Middle East. I'm silent because he knows way more than me about that stuff.
Yeah, and I think
if I can have him back, we'll definitely invite you to join us.
I think Scott would relish. I'm just going to point out that I read 3, I think Financial Times, Bloomberg, maybe Forbes, 3 of these, money magazines. They all had articles before anything was fired, before the shots fired in this whole operation, saying, fuck, $2 million for a missile against like $20,000 Houthi drone. Like the economics is not sustainable. We're not going to actually be able to fight this. That was the conclusion.
The West has less weapons now because of the special military operation. They're sending all these weapons to Ukraine that are promptly destroyed by the Russians.
They're looting Japan.
The economy stronger. You got better deals with the East and selling the oil and all that.
They're looting Japan for air defenses, like cannibalizing one colony to kind of patch up another. It's wonderful to see. And still people think there's these millions of things lined up.
I mean, war is not a good thing. And I hope that this thing ends soon. But it has been more for the benefit of the East and the West.
I mean, the US, Germany, Britain, they have all ran articles this week about we can't recruit. We're the lowest like we've been in 20 years. And we have empty fucking warehouses. There's nothing more to send.
You can't deceive the masses any longer.
The German guy, Pistorius, the new defense minister, said if it came to this intensity of fight, we'd have enough men and material for 2 days. 2 days against Russia. That's the state of Europe and these vessels.
The aircraft carrier battle groups were effective in the 50s, but times have passed them by. And again, this is a point that Scott hits home very well. It's just not a tactic or strategy that anyone cares about anymore.
We're in the age of drones and hypersonic missiles. That's the new warfare.
And satellite targeting of ships. I mean,
and I predicted it. I said we keep sending drones into Iran. They're eventually going to capture a drone and figure out how to make one themselves. They're not idiots. Exactly what happened. Now Iran and other adversaries of the U.S. empire have access to those drones too.
Oh,
And
Iran.
Russia's captured some submersible Ukrainian drones, developed their own, based on what they captured, and undoubtedly shared it with Iran, who is undoubtedly going to give it to Yemen, who is undoubtedly could very well use it against.
Can you imagine Biden finding out that the weapons he was trying to send to Nazis in Ukraine ended up in the hands of Hamas?
I think some of them did. I think some of them already confirmed they did. Yeah, they put someone on corruption list or something in Ukraine saying he's the one who orchestrated our weapons.
And Biden might actually care, but I doubt the actual weapons manufacturers really don't care because their bottom line is
it's all about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what's amazing about Russia is, that it's a nationally owned, interest-driven, not profit-driven military complex. And they've been fielding new weapon systems pretty much every month this year. Every month. I mean, they take a piece of everything that NATO gives. They're going to take it home. They're going to research it, and they do that.
Listen, gentlemen, I'm going to make sure to follow your new YouTube. So I'll find the link myself whenever I come back on. My leg's falling asleep. I really got to get going. But excellent speaking with you, and I'm very happy Alex Saab's free, and let's hope that Julian Assange is next.
So are we, and thanks for the Latin American expertise.
We got the link right here in the chat if you want the link.
I've already shared it. Thank you.
All right, Alex, thanks.
Thanks, Alex.
Take care.
I wonder...
Dust is ratcheting something up.
Yeah. It might be an opportune time to wrap things up. And Dust,
I'm sad Alex left, but I want to talk about the way I see it, the undemocratic practices of the imperialists against their own racist dogs, aka Trump.
Oh yeah, I mean he's been compared to Hitler this week. There's been amazing.
Well, that's not far off. I mean,
okay. Glad Carlo isn't here for this.
The way I would explain this is the U.S. imperialists are so unprincipled, so vile, so undemocratic that they're willing to deny basic democratic rights to their own dogs, to their own paws, to their own blatant racists. That's the way I see it.
No, and I see it the same, and it's a demonstration of the lack of democracy in this country and the reality of a class-based oligarchy. And when the class identifies its interests, they don't give a fuck about democracy, and they're not going to let democracy and people's votes threaten what they consider their core interests. And Trump seems to be a threat to their core interests.
I would disagree.
So democracy goes out the window because if he didn't, they would let him run. It just seems basic.
It doesn't even have to be that. Like he doesn't even have to threaten. They can just see it. Oh, it's not as opportune this time because they put him in the power and they used him last time. It's not opportune this way around. So they're willing to expose to the world that they're undemocratic just because they feel that arrogant and that powerful that they control every aspect of their system. He doesn't even have to represent a threat for them to do this.
Okay, no, that's fair. I mean, we don't need to quibble about that.
Exactly.
But it's exactly the point is it's not a democracy, and we pretend to be a democracy because we want, we don't want people to become ungovernable. And once the people realize it's not a fucking democracy, it's a corrupt oligarchy, then the people are going to become less and less governable and less able to, manipulate through their propaganda apparatus. And it'll be a big headache for them. But that's what we see more and more of is it's just becoming a big headache to manage this colossal declining empire and the attitudes and perceptions of the people, in the United States. It's becoming untenable and they don't know what to do. And they're incompetent, on top of all of that. And so it's really fun times. It's fun times.
Fun while it lasts, you're right about that. I mean, just saying that the democracy is on the ballot, I think that's a Biden phrase, right? And then removing...
Every year, those fuckers say that.
Yeah, they say that. And then removing a candidate, like removing the choice from everybody, no matter what you think about Trump. It's just taking the choice away. That's just amazing to me.
It's interesting. If you read the text of the decision from the judge in Colorado, if the Supreme Court does not agree to hear the case before the midterms, which is coming up very quickly, then Trump will be on the ballot. So it's a bit of a fake news. It's almost kind of like fake news because there's a very high probability that Trump will remain on the ballot. So two things can happen. The Supreme Court can decide it, in a timely manner. But if they don't put it on the front of their court cases and see it in a timely manner, Trump remains on the ballot. So it could be a tempest in a teapot, but we'll see how it plays out. There's a lot of other states that are trying to do the same thing. It's really harassment.
Yeah, a lot.
And it just demonstrates the joke of the democracy we have in this country. But
I got my popcorn.
I agree.
Yeah, I got no horse in the race, and I got my popcorn. That's pretty much all I said.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that it's undemocratic, even as someone who sees Trump as a vile, racist, and disgusting pig. Like, to me, Trump gives his anti-immigrant rhetoric, telling people, like the most exploited portion of the working class, that they're rapists and demonizing, dehumanizing them, gives
Some of them are good
justification.
people. Sorry, I remember that one.
He gives justification to the continuing genocide against the majority indigenous people who are forced from the countries and then die along the desert. Like, that's what he does. And even someone who is able to, give rhetoric that justifies their genocide, they're like, if they don't want to be president right now, we can defy all democratic practices because we don't want you in there right now, even though he's theirs. Like,
yeah, no, I mean, I would agree with that assessment of Trump, and I agree that his rhetoric his anti-immigrant rhetoric is despicable. I wouldn't say that it began with Trump or that he's the only one with that rhetoric. I mean, it's republicanism. It's a long line of conservative republicanism.
Arguably, the Democrats better carry out those policies of genocide than he can.
Well,
but I think they're both working for the same team. They're both working. Yeah. One of them divides people and rallies up the fascists. The other one carries out the policies that his rhetoric justifies.
Yeah, true. I mean, they had to pause the Ukraine project for his term, basically. It started under Obama with Biden as VP, but, they picked up right after he came back. But as long as we're talking and finishing on U.S. lunacy, I don't have the clip, but can I read to you a verbatim quote from the absolute most brilliant person in the U.S.? She's called Nikki Haley. You probably heard this one. Yeah, Hamas attacked on October 7. October 7 is Putin's birthday. Who is the happiest person in the world right now? It's Putin. That's the level of logic and sanity in electoral politics I see today, and I'm grabbing the popcorn. That's all I say.
Well, she is the savior of the Republicans, and all the billionaires have dumped DeSantis. They long ago, they dumped Trump. I mean, he was never really the main establishment candidate, but DeSantis was the hope that he could pretend to be Trump, but he would be Trump light, but he could get all the Trump voters over to him, and that failed. So the Trump voters were not persuaded that DeSantis is legit, and they saw him for what he was, and now they've dumped DeSantis, and they're all in on Nimrata. But
Nimrata, that's good. But no matter how stupid she is, the money keeps flowing in. Yeah,
I don't think she's stupid. She's calculating, and she engages in rhetoric that isn't gonna be helpful to her. But she's trying, and she's a lying politician. She could probably easily be a Democrat if she was paid enough. Like, she could just spout all the Democratic things.
True.
But they're not principled.
Okay, 2 degrees above Kamala. I'll give you that. A little bit smarter.
She used to work at a Waffle House, so I mean, those are
that's
a good
Hey,
job.
You don't talk shit about Waffle House.
I like Waffle House. Love Waffle House.
I still can't
believe the workers there. Tip your waitresses correctly.
She represented the United States at the UN. I mean, to me, that is the joke of the century. Nimrata.
Now, I think we've seen a Trump in office. We've seen a Biden in office. There's no hope in the Imperialist duopoly. Only independent infrastructure and building working class power, community organization, militant labor can have any effect on our politics.
What do you guys say we give Dust that last encouraging word?
I'm okay with that. I want to see him on screen, though. I want to say he needs to say that to my face.
Yeah, I mean,
that's okay, Dust.
I'm working right now.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm strapping down this load. You want this load to fall off?
I'm
down the
doing 12 shifts in a row. I work later today. I have a double on Christmas, just so I have everybody's sympathy. So we're all
Solidarity,
working
brother.
people. Yeah.
Solidarity, brother.
All right. Merry
So-
Christmas to both of you and all the viewers out there.
Thank you.
That's true. We will reconvene. We're going to try and reconvene the day after Christmas. But yeah, this is the last episode before Christmas. Thanks, Dust, very much for joining us. Ben, as always, thank you very much. We want to thank Alex Suarez for his expertise and updating us on the great news of Alex Saab. So with that, yeah, we'll reconvene the day after Christmas, hopefully. We will see you then.